Great. Okay, so welcome everyone to the Nature, Community and Arts webinar. So my name is Katie Wilkinson and I'm the Wild Communities Team Leader at Devon Wildlife Trust. And we also have Emma this time, the Wild Communities Officer working behind the scenes. And this evening we're going to be looking at how we can use nature to engage your local how we can use the arts to engage your local community with your nature or environmental focused project. It's a slightly different format tonight if you've ever come to one of our webinars before. So we've got several speakers from communities right across Devon who are going to tell us about how they've used art in their nature focused projects in their local community. So we have, so I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then we have Kate from Action on Climate Team Bridge, the ACT team, talking about the Act with Arts Climate Festival. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have Beth from Harbour House in Kingsbridge, then a Q&A with Beth, and then we have Jan and Karen from the Village Hub in Plymouth. Then we'll have Steph from the Creations Hub talking about the Net Zero Visions Toolkit. And hopefully we might have David from Plymouth Uni behind the scenes as well, there for any questions. And then we have Will from Monks Road planting and art murals. I can't speak tonight. Anyway, and then we'll have hopefully around 10 minutes to do questions. So, first of all, before we get started, we have a quick poll, which hopefully Emma will be launching. And the question is, have you used arts in your nature-based project? So if you could just give us a click, I'll just give it a moment. Let's give it one more moment for everyone to just read the questions and answer. So it looks like most of you have answered, so I'll just share that. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. So it's kind of, yeah, really mixed actually. So quite a few of you haven't and not sure how to do it. Some would like to but haven't done so yet, and some have used arts a few times, maybe the speakers. And also someone said that yes, it's a regular feature in our projects. So great, it's really good to know where you're all at. Let's close that down. So I'm just going to do a very brief intro. I'm just going to just change my screen a little bit so I can actually see my presentation. That's better. Okay, so thank you for the answers. I'm just going to give a quick overview now as to why the arts is a great way to engage your community. Oh, it's being very unresponsive tonight. Come on, there we go. So I think there are actually quite a lot of reasons why you would use art in your community project. From our point of view, you know, the arts can play a really big part in helping us tackle the climate and ecological emergency. And, you know, really quite simply, I think we need the arts now more than ever as a conservation movement. And I think a big reason is, you know, the inspiration that the arts gives to people. And, you know, where there's inspiration, there's hope. And we need hope in the truckload right now. You know, if we're going to tackle the climate and ecological, you know, crisis that we're in, we need hope for the future. And, you know, the arts allows us to think big. It allows us to use our imagination and creativity to reimagine a greener, a wilder, a healthier future for us all. And you know, imagination and creativity, you know, it has no boundaries, and the arts can really harness that. The arts allows us to connect with landscapes, connect with our local wildlife, connect with our local environment, And it allows us to do that with our heart instead of our heads. And, after all, we won't protect what we don't love. So it's really important that, we engage our hearts in what we're seeing. Lots of people paint and draw and write and sing and dance and perform, with nature as their inspiration, or in fact, nature as their backdrop as well. Art allows people to explore the natural world in a different way as well. It allows us to learn about our natural world in a non-academic way, which actually can really help people that have different learning styles, and different diversities within that. Exploring in this way can create more profound meaning for ourselves and a deeper connection to nature as well, when we are exploring it in a different way. And like I said, using our heart and our emotions and what we feel and our senses, when we're engaging with our local environment or nature or wildlife. Art can also connect us to people through shared experiences, such as watching a play in the outdoors together, or admiring artwork inspired by nature, or in fact, walking down the street and, sharing positive comments about a mural that you might have seen. It can really connect us, and yeah, connect neighbours to neighbours. There's actually also been some research done about the importance of art and nature to the well-being of us. So Thompson found that creative green prescription programs, which combine arts and nature-based activities, can actually significantly impact the psychosocial well-being of adult mental health service clients. And they actually recommend that museums with parks and gardens blend programs to incorporate nature, art, and well-being. And let's not forget that natural mediums are used for art, so clay, wood, graphite, water. And I think nowadays, art is becoming a way to express environmental activism as well. Let's not forget it can bring together people in an outdoor space as well. Particularly in local green spaces. And actually, nowadays, it's really quite common to see art trails, benches that have, beautiful carved artwork in them, sculptures in the park, wildlife photography, or exhibitions outside, outdoor art galleries, performances in open spaces, story and poem competitions, soundscapes, UV light displays. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. At DWT, we've used the arts to engage with people about wildlife and nature for many years. It's a great way to get people to come together in a green space. So, doing arts and crafts with children, for instance. And even a few years ago, we organised a concert for wildlife at Exeter Cathedral. And as part of that, we had a photographer come and do some beautiful photography of the musicians in one of our nature reserves, which I just think is fantastic. We also had a concert in Appledore by a Norwegian ice musician. We've had artists create wood sculptures on our reserves. And like I said, crafting sessions, again, the list has gone on. In terms of how we've engaged with the arts in our work. I just wanted to highlight something more recently through the Saving Devon's Treescapes project, which commissioned a photographer, Robert Darch, to catalogue really the sad and challenging work of the removal of ash trees from Devon landscapes. And the powerful images basically allowed us to engage with lots of different people to show the impacts of the terrible ash dieback disease on people and wildlife through the exhibitions. So lots of different ways that we can use it. I'm sure there's lots of other reasons that our speakers will touch on as well. But, in kind of sort of conclusion, if you like, I think, the arts allows us to reimagine and to imagine a different future. It allows us to be inspired. It allows us to connect to others and to nature. It allows ourselves to be created ourselves, and it allows us to find hope. It's a powerful way to engage people in nature and therefore inspire them to take action for it. And like I said, I'm sure there is much more besides. So next up, we have the lots of different speakers talking tonight, but first we have Kate from Action on Climate Team Bridge, who's going to tell us more about their arts festival. So I'll stop sharing my screen and it's over to you, Kate.
Brilliant, thank you. Good evening, everybody. That's it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kate, and I chair a group called Action on Climate in Team Bridge. I'm not sure because there seems to be another slide come up on the screen. Is that somebody else's presentation?
Yeah, that's best presentation, Emma, if you want to.
Okay, no, that's fine. All right. Yeah, so I chair a Action on Climate in Team Bridge group of volunteers. We've got about 500 volunteers based across the whole of Team Bridge, and we've been in operation for about 5 years, and we've got about 500 members. And up until now, we've been very factual. So I have a spreadsheet or I have a paper on every single possible scenario you can imagine. And if I'm totally honest, spreadsheets and papers don't particularly excite me. So what we decided to do is to come up with a different way that we could communicate with people. So about 4 months ago, we launched our festival, the idea of holding a festival within Team Bridge called Act with the Arts Festival. And we've been inviting artists across Team Bridge. We've invited every single school across Team Bridge. And we've had an incredible response. So the festival is going to take place between June the 22nd to the 29th this year. The hub of it is going to be in Newton Abbot, and we've got 16 different venues across Team Bridge where activities are going to take place. And we've got about 50 different activities and artists working with us in producing this festival. So we are incredibly excited by this, firstly because of the response we've had from so many artists, because to be honest with you, we have no funding for this. Everybody that's participating and has volunteered is doing it because they believe that they can make a difference and they can help people just stop and think about how that we can look after our living planet slightly better. The centre point of the festival is going to be a tree of wishes, which is going to be about 10 feet tall, which is going to be made by workshops being held in schools across Team Bridge to produce the tree of wishes. And it will be the children's wishes about what they'd like our future to look like, what they'd like our planet to look like in the future. And it's really based on positivity. So it's not fear-based, it's really uplifting and just celebrating where we live, what kind of planet we have, but just saying to people, we're not looking after it particularly well, and what can we do just to stop and begin to change our habits? And the response has been overwhelming. I cannot begin to tell you what level of support we've had from volunteers, from groups that are allowing us to use their premises for nothing. It's been quite humbling, I would say. So yeah, if anybody wants to get involved, if you want any more information, and we've never tried anything like this before, and I certainly haven't put on anything like this before. So I am learning very quickly about it all. But if anybody wants any more information, would like to get involved, then please contact me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate. Sounds absolutely amazing and wonderful. And it, brilliant that so many people have come together. There seems to be a real sense of community around it, which is even better. Brilliant. So I think Emma's put the link to the festival in the chat. So please do check it out, everyone. I think we'll probably put it on our community events webpage as well for you. So yeah, really hope that goes really well, and perhaps we'll even get down there ourselves to check it out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Right, next up we have Beth. Hopefully, Beth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you. All good.
Hooray! Okay, we'll just jump in if I kind of go robotic again.
I will.
So hi everyone. Sorry, I'm not going to put my video on because of the technical issues that we mentioned, but my name is Beth Richards and I'm the Education and Engagement Curator at Harbour House in Kingsbridge. Harbour House is an arts and wellbeing charity. We've got a gallery, a vegetarian cafe, and then some movement studios, but I predominantly focus on community art projects. Could I have the next slide, please, Emma? Okay, so when I'm thinking about doing community art projects, I'm thinking about why do we want to engage with our community, and there are loads of different reasons, and those reasons will kind of inform the way that myself, the community members and the artists that I work with kind of devise and deliver those projects. So are you just interested in attracting members of the public just on a one-off basis? Is it a one-off event? Or are you kind of trying to build relationships and really build that regular interaction with participants, collaborators, audience, or clients or consumers? Is it about inspiring future potential activists or future potential educators? It could be about giving the public greater ownership and agency within public institutions and community organisations. So really, thinking about whose voices we don't normally hear in these community art projects and how we can amplify them. Is it about giving more people greater ownership around sustainability, climate and natural science projects? It could be about helping people develop skills and experience. Sometimes maybe that might be about developing potential careers, or other times it might be for broader social impact aims. And it also might be looking at engagement numbers and thinking about how we can bring them up. Could I have the next slide, please? Oh, yeah. And finally, sorry, I missed one out. Thank you. Is it about bringing different, so when we talk about community, community's such a huge term. There's communities of geography, there's communities of identity, and there's communities of interest. So who is it that we want to work with? And actually, can it be about bringing those different community groups together who might not normally work together, and actually work together on local community challenges? So for example, in Kingsbridge, so I've only been working there for about a year, but from all the different sort of demographic groups, everyone says that they would like more intergenerational engagement. So that's been a real key focus of ours. Okay, next slide, please, Emma. So apologies if this is teaching grandma to suck eggs, but just some really practical things to consider whenever you're working with community. So things like first aid, mental health first aid, understanding safeguarding policy and who might be a safeguarding lead for the community projects, thinking about access and disability, and thinking about what kind of insurances you need, because sometimes unfortunately things do go wrong, and we need to make sure that we're making as safe as possible and welcoming as possible space as we can for all the community participants we're working with. And we don't have time to go into that, but I've pointed you to some links of where you can go for training around that if you're not confident in that. Next slide, please, Emma. And the kind of community art projects that we do at Harbour House is based on a model called socially engaged practice, which is really about thinking about our community members as kind of partners in the project. So I think often when you see community art projects, It can be perhaps in the kind of consultation phase, or perhaps it might be quite a shallow engagement. And what we try and do is really be collaborative, instead of just kind of us parachuting into community and being like, oh, we know what's best for you, let's just do this art project that will solve this issue. Actually, it's about recognizing that community members are the experts in their own communities and saying, okay, what are your thoughts on climate grief, on eco-anxiety, and what kind of creative methods can we do to bring people together to talk about this? And this image is called a ladder of citizen participation. And so eventually we're trying to get to this thing of citizen control. So it's a community member saying, this is what we want to do, which is amazing why we've got so many volunteers here from different communities. But it's also about being practical and realistic. You know, it might take years and years of building that trust and rapport with community members for them to develop skills of fundraising and project management and evaluation. So where's realistic for you to aim with your project? Okay, next slide, please. So socially engaged practice that I just mentioned previously is art that engages with the community, whether that's of geography, of identity, or of interest in a meaningful way. And that community are often involved in the creation of the artwork. And that process of making is just as important as the product. So it's about what we learn along the way, rather than just a whole focus on, you know, what is the sort of decorative or aesthetic value. And on the left, there are a number of other terms that are used for this kind of process. But I think artistic activism is something that I find like really a galvanizing term, and thinking about that kind of people power at the heart of community art projects. Next slide, please. So this, we did have a little bit of trouble with this video, but fingers crossed it will work. And this is by an artist called Jeremy Deller. And I think it really shows the kind of like diversity of socially engaged practice. He made a project in 2001 called The Battle of All Grieve, where he worked with people who had previously been miners and previously been police in the miners' strikes in the 80s. And I think what I love about the work is it's looking at something that's actually like really contentious and bringing community together to kind of rethink that through, and kind of a catharsis through this art. And it's also, you know, not what we always expect as art. It's this huge scale reenactment with hundreds, actually I think it was thousands of residents who had lived in Orgreave in the 80s and who were still living there in the early 2000s. And so yeah, there was this performance, there's also a documentary, and then there was an exhibition with sort of archival works from photographs from the time, with oral histories of people who had been at that strike. And yeah, the community members really said that it was kind of a healing process and really helped bridge that divide. So I think that's really demonstrating the transformative impact that art can have. Okay, could we go back to the slides, please, Emma? So co-creation, so collaboration is really at the heart of socially engaged practice. And there's a really fantastic arts organisation in the Northwest called Heart of Glass. And they created this kind of manifesto about what co-creation is. So it's a set of processes and working methods and approaches that seeks to generate change. It takes place with people and not a doing to people. It doesn't have set outputs, but it is outcome focused. So again, thinking about the process rather than the product. It focuses on the how and not the what. It's maybe facilitated, but leadership shifts. So again, working towards that partnership rather than the power dynamic of the kind of institutional organization making change from the top. So it might use art to generate changes, but is likely to apply to all stages of program development, design, and evaluation. It shifts agency and power and challenges privilege. It brings partners together on an equal footing. It is relational and not transactional, and it empowers and it includes. And something that's kind of missing from all of this, because this is quite like academic in a way, is actually there's so much joy in working with people that you might not otherwise meet, and that is what is so fantastic about working collaboratively with communities. I just wanted to take you really quickly through a project that I ran last year with an absolutely amazing group of sixth formers from Kingsbridge Community College, because I think this really demonstrates that kind of community partnership that we're trying to drive forward. So if I could see the next slide, please, Emma. So we called this project Young Curators, and the kind of rationale behind it was because Harbour House had been going for kind of 20 years, but they hadn't been doing a lot of outreach and engagement work. They created this new post of, are you still there? Sorry, my I've been talking for so long, my laptop went to sleep. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Great, thank you. But one of the few community partnerships that they did have and wanted to look at growing was Kingsbridge Community College. And within Kingsbridge Community College, they had a similar goal and aim as Harbour House, which is they really wanted to widen their engagement with the community. So they have an enrichment program with their sixth formers, and we decided to work with them over the period of a year. So the young people who kind of signed up to work with us, you know, there was no kind of pitch. It was just work on a community art project that you want to make happen. So some of them joined because they wanted to learn more about art and they were really kind of inherently creative. Some wanted to gain kind of project management skills so that, you know, they could put it on their UCAS form and it could look really impressive. And for others, they just kind of wanted to do something outside of the school building. So they really liked being able to come to Harbour House. And all of those were really great starting points. So can I have the next slide, please? So we began by sharing contemporary socially engaged art projects. So we did site visits to the British Art Show was on in Plymouth at the time. So we went to some of those exhibitions and talked about, you know, the really wide breadth of what art can actually be. And I started with a question, which was, what do you as young people want Kingsbridge to look like in 20 years' time? Because at that time, Harbour House had been going for 20 years and they kind of wanted to make this shift. So that 20 years seemed like a good starting point. And the young people identified a real challenge for the community, that they felt that there was this generational divide, but that there was really an opportunity in that a lot of the community recognised the gravity of the climate crisis and really thought that this was an issue that brought people together. So it was also important for us to discuss the practicalities of the young people's time. So, you know, they were going through their A levels, some of them had part-time jobs, and working that into kind of the project plan so that they weren't overloaded and that there was still this kind of fun and joyful learning experience for them, rather than thinking, oh God, another thing on my to-do list when I'm already really stressed. And what they decided to do, which was very canny actually, they looked at the kind of community calendar and thought, what can we kind of hook into that already has an audience that we can share this kind of climate focused community artwork with? And so that was a number of things, like they're already planned to be Kingsbridge Nature Festival, a Love Your Park event, Celebrate Start Bay at Slapton Ley. And we worked with several different artists who all worked in totally different mediums to explore in different ways the climate crisis and how it might be affecting the local ecology of Kingsbridge. And so some of those artists did things like life drawing, but with foraged materials. Another artist, we created cyanotypes, which is a kind of a cameraless technology and creates these really beautiful blue images with foraged natural materials. We did some creative poetry writing with an artist duo called Crab and Bee along the estuary, and kind of painted that in ethically sourced clay and water. So real mixture of workshops. And then at the end of the project, we showcased all of those kind of community workshop outcomes in our gallery, along with a number of different kind of artworks that documented the whole project that were co-curated by the sixth formers and by an artist called Katie Sparks. And then, yeah, that exhibition, so it had the 6 young people's work, it had the artist, Katie, and it had about 124 community members' work in the gallery. So it was a really fantastic way of kind of celebrating community creativity and kind of imagining a hopeful possible future. If I could have the next slide, please.
You've just got 1 minute, Beth.
Okay, I will really quickly share our successes and learning points. So the young people had kind of 3 key aims. They wanted to bring people together that might not normally talk to each other. They wanted to give people the opportunity to do something creative, and they wanted to engage people with local nature. And in our evaluation, actually 100% of respondents said that they had met all those 3 criteria. So that was amazing. The young people said that they learned transferable skills. It was actually a really valuable space where they were genuinely listened to and had agency. And I observed in them kind of growing confidence in their public communication skills. It was incredible throughout the year. We had great attendance and great feedback. One young person is actually now part of our front of house team for the gallery because she was just so impressive. A learning point for me was kind of communication expectations. Like, they were really crap at communicating by email. It just wasn't how they like to communicate. So it was thinking, okay, so how can we safely communicate by WhatsApp if that's more useful? So it's recognizing that different demographics like to communicate in different ways. That was a learning point for me. And yeah, I'll just sum it up. It's just to sum up, it's absolutely fantastic working with young people. They've got so much energy, so much ideas and ambition and creativity. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Beth. Yeah, sounded like an excellent project, and really inspirational project to be part of. Does anyone have any questions for Beth? We've got 5 minutes. I actually have a question if there's no one. So I actually have a question about how do you think this project, or just the arts in general even, can help with eco-anxiety, not just in the younger generation, but also sort of all generations of people?
So something that we tried to do, and something that in that project, for example, we kind of learned about together in some of the earlier sessions, is embed the 5 ways to well-being in our work. So that includes things that kind of came up naturally, but things like taking notice and mindfulness. So some of the other community workshops that I forgot to mention was we did some deep listening exercises in local woods, and then did sound score drawings, and seeing the sort of the positive mental health effects that people reported back in their kind of evaluation feedback was incredible. And that was a really diverse group of people as well, kind of ranging from 3-year-olds to people in their 70s, all different backgrounds. So yeah, if people aren't familiar with the 5 ways to well-being, just have a Google. There's a really Mind describe it really well, and the NHS describe it really well, and they're just very simple things to consider when thinking about community activities. And I won't be able to remember them all now because I'm on the spot, but there's something like take notice, give, be active, so just doing something physical to move our bodies, learning, and then I can't remember the 5th one. I don't know if you know it, Katie, because I saw you nodding when I said the 5 ways to well-being.
Yeah, I did. It's always that question, is like, oh, can I remember them all?
Yeah.
I can't remember the 5th one either.
Yeah, but they are actually very simple, and how both NHS and Mind describe them on their websites. You can kind of translate it quite well into a lot of different community activities, I think.
Yeah, I agree. They are a really good foundation to kind of think about any activities that you're doing in community. There's a couple of questions in the chat, so we've just got 1 or 2 minutes. So Joe asks, I'm curious, what were those objects in the last picture?
Oh, the objects from the last picture were these light box sculptures with kind of edited photographs on them that were from some of the initial clay workshops we discussed, but the young people took some of these workshop outcomes on quite a kind of sci-fi futuristic narrative, thinking about possible imagined utopias, and thinking about an alternative, thinking about the doom and gloom, and thinking about optimism, but from a sort of sci-fi fantasy perspective.
Cool. And Caroline asks, Beth mentioned communications. What ways do you find are successful to reach a wide audience?
Oh, brilliant question. And number one is definitely by building strong community partnerships. So I think I am always really aware that there are other people in the community who understand the community members that they work with a lot better. So, for example, we work with the Family Advice Support Team in Kingsbridge, who run an LGBT plus youth group. So if we want to work with young LGBT people, we go to them. Local primary schools, local secondary schools, the Care Hub, who work with age concerned clients. So building strong partnerships who can not only help you reach people, but also give you advice about how best to support them in your engagement. I think that for me has been a lot of a stronger tactic than just thinking, oh, we're going to go on this kind of social media marketing campaign and we need to have a really shiny website. I actually think it's about talking to people and recognizing the expertise that other people in your community have.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And reaching out to different organisations or other groups that are connecting with diverse groups in your community, and just reaching deeper into the community just means that in terms of sort of inclusivity, you're managing to reach much more people and be really inclusive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and realizing that you can never be an expert in working with every kind of demographic. So I haven't done that many projects with disabled adults, for example, but at Harbour House we're starting to test that model by partnering with Activities 115, who are experts in that. So it's also about always recognizing the learning we have to do. And it's just fantastic to meet new people as well. So
exactly. Great. Thank you so much, Beth, for your presentation tonight. I can see that Karen's put in the 5 ways to wellbeing, and the other one is connect.
Connect, of course. Thank you, Karen.
Cool. Right, we're going to move on. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you.
And we have Jan and Karen up next from the Village Hub in Plymouth. So over to you.
Thank you so much for having us. Really lovely to hear Beth. We worked with her on a project while she was working for an organisation called Take Apart in Plymouth. So just wholeheartedly endorse working with her and the socially engaged practice way that she works. It's completely gorgeous. Love it to pieces. So the Village Hub is been going for 3 and a bit years now. We started off during the pandemic as a kind of mutual aid group of people in the area of Stoke and Morristown. So we're very urban in Plymouth. Morristown is the 3rd most deprived neighbourhood out of 39, and Stoke is a kind of interesting mix of diversity. So it's the 16th most deprived, but it has some like humongous posh houses alongside many HMOs, people who are not in work for all kinds of different reasons. And so we have a really eclectic community really here. So next slide, please. We also, I guess probably because we met Beth and we were really interested with socially engaged practice, but that idea of doing things with people, not to them or for them, is really important for us. So we really set that out at the beginning in our mission statement. And we want to build relationships first and foremost here. So we don't really want to do things for people. We don't really feel like educating people particularly works, because people will only hear what they want to hear. And you know, shock horror, sometimes when you say something that comes out of your mouth and it lands in somebody's ears, it's not necessarily translated all that well. And so we spend a lot of our time unpicking communication and learning that deep listening skill that Beth was also talking about. Really, our kind of core volunteers and some of our staff members now have spent quite a time doing coaching practice and learning really simple techniques and how to connect with people on that level. And thinking about art, that's extremely important. Also thinking about the environment and the climate, because people are really passionate about this stuff. And sometimes when passions get like deeply in the way of relationships, conflicts and disagreements and misunderstandings can arise. But that might just be our experience and not yours. Next slide, please. So our context is that we are right next to a local park called the Blockhouse Park. We love it, but it's been quite a neglected area in the city's history. It was historically a kind of army fort. It was a redoubt built in 1789. On top of quite a high hill as a defensive position, and then it's got like steep sides on like sort of 3 out of 4 sides roughly, and it's got stunning views, huge big skyscapes, but many local people don't go there or didn't go there because it was too high up the hill to get there. Some people didn't even know it was there because it's like tucked away. The entrances are super small. And we got involved in it because we noticed in lockdown that local people were using it a bit more. And we had an opportunity to work with Green Minds in Plymouth to do a little bit of rewilding. And we were able with the council to get some permissions. So as a community organisation, we've got permission to do events and stuff in quite a large area of the park, including groundworks, providing we don't break the following rules, which are events of more than 200 people or extremely loud noise that could be seen as a deterrent in local neighbours. So basically, providing we don't do a massive rave, we're good. And we have been working with people, collecting their ideas through the last like 3 years, through like fun days and all kinds of things, just kind of collecting ideas, what local people would like to see and what might happen. So next slide. Yes, so we worked with Take Apart and with Rachel Dobbs, and we submitted a combined funding bid. This was actually Beth's work, so it feels a bit cheeky me talking about it, but to the Arts Council and the Heritage Lottery, and also Awards for All. And that gave us some money to employ a local artist, which was a real big winner for us, because the local artists we employed in brought a whole new level of creativity into our thinking and a whole new level of deepening community builders. So they are also a socially engaged arts practitioner, and I can't recommend finding one of them highly enough and getting them involved in your organisation. And yeah, we ran some free workshops throughout the year that invited local people to engage with the park and to make friends. And we ran a shed load of activities, including some natural colour work, some sound foraging, corn dolly making. And we ran a forest school for small local residents. We did a film screening, and we created some signs as part of a collaboration with the Arts University Plymouth. I have to say, working with statutory organisations like that is really interesting. It seemed like there was more need to get your logo or get their logo on various different bits of signage that actually in the end weren't ever installed. So, but what the importance for us is that we started to build relationships with local people in the community who are interested in art. So we engaged with 2 ceramics students who were doing their masters. We engaged with somebody who was doing an arts degree, and particularly the ceramics students, we've maintained that relationship. They both live semi-locally, and we've really built some quite good relationships with them. So next slide, please. Oh, next slide. Oh, fab. Is you?
Yeah. One of the activities that we set up quite early on was something called a culture club, which was looking at celebrating traditions and old practices that have gone on time immemorial, really, but linked to the wheel of the year and the seasons. So we discovered quite early on that although people come along often to share the food, because we had foods connected with each of the practices, we also discovered that people really enjoyed making things. So there is a focus for each of the culture club. And each of the focuses, but each of the foci were part of the tradition. So for instance, up here, we made lanterns using willow and hazel for our wassail. So the wassail, we've been doing wassail for 2 years now. And the art that we linked to it was the lantern making, which is really popular. We also, these are the 2 of our most recent ones. The in bulk celebration was recently to do with St. Bridget's crosses, and so again we used flax and willow and did some weaving and some quite complex structures that people were really enjoying working together, doing it alongside others, learning, but it's all part of just enjoying, really. So a lot of what we were doing was about people enjoying doing something new in a relaxed environment, and the Culture Club was really successful in doing that, and they've gone from strength to strength. Sorry, yeah, next slide, yeah, please. One of the things that we came across really clearly was that people wanted to use the park as a place to celebrate, to gather, to do things together, and to celebrate whatever we wanted to celebrate, really. So for instance, this is a slide of our wassail, which, as I said, was the 2nd year we've done it. And the first year I think we had 25 people. This year we had 70. So it's a growing, I can't say they're all local residents. Some of them are perennial wassailers who go.
The joy of Eventbrite as well, to try and get local.
Exactly. But what was interesting and what I noticed at this one was that we had a massive group of 70 trailing through the park. Wasn't so much art as singing and making a lot of noise, but it was very enjoyable and great celebratory experience. But what I noticed this time was that a lot of local people were sort of hovering around the edges of it, who were watching what was happening, and hopefully, as we're going from strength to strength, next year they'll feel more like joining in. So it's about being there, I think somebody else said, being there, being visible, making those connections just by being there and doing things, we found really valuable. Next slide, please.
So Stoke in Bloom. So one of our initiatives was to do a just pretty traditional bloom. We have a local resident who is a gardener, but we were able to factor into that. So as well as just the real crunchy getting yourself down and dirty in the mud, we've managed to create a space that used to be a disused toilet block. It had been empty since the pandemic, and it was a proper eyesore, I think, in our local area, and obviously not used as a toilet block. And the council did the groundwork, and then we were accepted to have the tender. So we did the proper process with our local authority to be able to tender for that properly. We were the only person who tendered, interestingly. So it's a way in. You feel like, oh, this is going to be really daunting, but in actual fact, local authorities have no money to look after these spaces, and so it's quite nice for community groups to kind of get involved in this stuff. And we've been able to create a space which we've used as like a kind of mini theatre space. So the bottom picture on this slide shows some Morris men having a bit of a field day, and some people having a go at watching. So next space, please. Next slide, sorry.
So I was lucky enough to be able to attend this, funded by some of our funding streams. So I went along to a permacultural design course, and it did upskill me in terms of the permaculture practices, in terms of growing and using the space, earth care. But equally as important, in fact, almost more importantly, it was a look at the designing how we grow the community. So fair share and people care was right at the heart of it. So one of the things that we looked at very early was trying to gather as much information. It's observing not just the growing space, but observing how the park was used, what people did in it, and then engaging in conversation. So client interview was more a survey of park users. So anyone who was up there doing anything, we talked to them about what they saw the park as, what it meant to them, what they wanted for the future for it. So we looked a lot at one of the things that came out really clearly was that people wanted something beautiful. They wanted to look at something, they wanted to enjoy the space. And translated really as they wanted something arty, they wanted something that was colourful and bright and lifted the spirits. Next slide, please.
You've got 2 minutes, just
Okay.
so you know.
So this is some of the artwork that was going on there. So these were the signs that we talked about earlier on. There are the 2 ceramic signs at the top that we worked with the 2 girls who were doing the ceramics, corn dolly making, bulb planting, because people talked about wanting to see bright and colourful. So we did a lot of bulb planting up there, about 1,000 or so bulbs at a time. And people were really enjoying that. Next slide, please. And the problem is the solution. That's a classic permaculture principle, and some things don't work, and there's the signs that we put in the ground were not put in securely enough, although they had whacking great pieces of concrete on the bottom. Local youth population wanted to see how easy it was to remove them, so they shook them around a lot until they came loose. Some of them got broken, some of them didn't work in the firing process. So from that, we decided that we would make a mosaic. So out of the problem being it wasn't as successful as we had hoped, we made a beautiful mosaic. So that was, is really being remarked upon now. And it was something that came out of something that wasn't successful, but has worked.
Next slide. And final slide, I think. So yeah, it's been really interesting working with a really diverse population and diverse opinions. And we have some super creative people. We've got people who absolutely believe that unless we do something with the climate tomorrow, things are going to get much worse. But we also have people who really are way further back in their thinking around climate. And so therefore we're constantly beginning to grow by understanding and immersion in what's going on, so we can kind of sort of like behind the scenes change opinion and understanding just by what is possible rather than by looking at what is impossible, because we've discovered with local people, when you dictate answers and solutions to them, very often that's when people dig their heels in and refuse to connect. We often do things in really small groups. So we have workshops with maybe 3, 4, perhaps 5 people. And we've learned to love those small groups rather than complain that not enough people turn up. And we feel that the connection with beauty, so that very strong artistic connection is vital, not just for our own well-being, but for community well-being as well. So I think that feeds back into what Katie was saying at the very beginning. Art does do something with hope and it uplifts the soul. Is that my last slide, or is there one more to go?
That's it.
No, that's it. Thanks very much for
Perfect.
listening to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Karen and Jan. That was excellent and really inspiring. If you've got questions for Karen and Jan, please leave them till the end, and then we'll do questions for all the rest of the speakers at the end, or feel free to pop them in the chat so you don't forget them. So next up we have Steph from the Creations Hub talking about the Net Zero Visions Toolkit. Steph, over to you.
Thank you. Hopefully there we go. It's on the screen. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm here to talk about a really wonderful project. I would feel so blessed to have been part of it. And it's had quite the impact. So I just want to tell you about it, really. There's somebody else on our webinar as well. David Sargent's here from Plymouth University, and he was integral in the project. But he's asked me to do the presentation because I walked through it from start to finish. But we were just one of several projects that were doing the same thing at the same time. So it may be that David has some of the answers to your questions at the end rather than me. But I'm here to tell you about what I did and the Tiverton project, and it was all about engaging communities through art. And our focus was on net zero visions and creating a mural to engage people in the debate. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yes, so why this project? As others have said, really, the big aim, overarching aim, was to make a socio-political statement about net zero. We wanted to catch people's attention. We wanted to stop people in the street so that we could have some conversations and see what could really be done to make a difference in terms of the climate emergency. But we wanted to make it really meaningful for our location, and so that was really important. So we're in Tiverton in mid-Devon, and we wanted to make sure that it really spoke to local people. And to enable us to do that, we had to talk to local people about it, and we had to make sure that the message contained within was going to be really relevant to them. And the main aim really was to encourage debate. Yes, we want people to talk about it through the mural, but we really wanted people to do action, to actually act on what was in there. I think as we go on and I tell you a bit more about the project, hopefully you'll agree that this has happened. And with the mural, we wanted to reach people in a different way. So we've been trying lots of different methods, and we've had various different leaflets, and we've had different speakers, and we've many different ways, but actually art engages people in a different way, and it attracts people that may not be engaging in other methods that are being used. So it was a really interesting and fruitful way to reach people. And the bottom line is that it's made a really dull and boring interesting and colourful. So it was, it's had quite the impact here in Tiverton. So the aim for us was to create a vision of hope for the future. When we got our group together to discuss about this, that was the key message, that we wanted it to be achievable, but we also wanted to dream big. But we wanted it to be a hopeful and colourful vision of what a net zero Tiverton might look like. And that was the question that we hung on to throughout. What would it look like if we were net zero? And it was really lovely to be part of a global community, but others working in Devon as well for the same thing. It was just really interesting to be part of a wider group doing the same thing. Next slide, please. So really getting the right people on board, it was probably the most successful thing really that we could have done right at the start, because once you get the right people on board, it seems to flow a little bit better. So it was very much a multi-agency approach. So the key players in Tiverton are Sustainable Tiverton, and they are very active. They do so many different projects, and this is one of the projects that they were involved in, but they reached out themselves as well. So They reached out to local farmers, they reached out to children in the schools, they reached out to people who had heard of their organisation but might be more on the arty side to give them some ideas. So they were absolutely key in this particular project. And also I've put on there on the slide the other agencies in Devon that were involved. So Devon Climate Emergency, the University of Plymouth, and Arts and Humanities Research Council were all involved in the project. And thank goodness they were, really, because it really helped to propel it to a different level. So I know David might be able to talk into that later if anyone's got any questions about their input. But also Mid Devon District Council, because at the end of the day, we were looking to do a mural in a public space and we needed to get them on board to help us. So yeah, they were the main players in our particular group. The picture there is actually artwork by my daughter. So even right at the very first earliest stages of this project, Sustainable Tiverton went out to all the local primary schools and secondary schools and said, create, what would your net zero vision look like? What would Tiverton look like if we really, really had reached this? And lots of children participated. And my daughter actually won the competition. And it was from her artwork, which is actually probably 4 times bigger than what you can see on the screen. They asked her to get involved as the youth voice for this particular project. And so, to be totally honest, I've jumped on the back of my daughter. So she's very, very, very passionate about the environment, and I kind of hung along. But it has it's like the project that's a gift that keeps on giving. So it's just spiraled into all sorts of amazing and beautiful things, but through my daughter. So I just put that on there because that kind of kick-started our family involvement in it. But I really wanted to say that how important it is to involve voices of all ages. And the children's voice is really, really powerful. So if you are thinking of perhaps doing a mural, then engaging the children would be an absolutely brilliant way to look at it and to help you get started. Next slide, please. So our story. So the picture there with the face on it, that's the blank wall that we had. So we chose we chose that setting there. So we gathered a team, a very varied team, all ages, youth voice as well as farmers' voice, as well as local residents, very diverse group of people gathered together. And we spoke and we chatted and we were on Zoom an awful lot. And we dreamed big and we thought, what could this mural look like? It was very important to us to include elements of the local climate action plan that had already been developed. So we looked at it from all sorts of elements. We looked at it from an energy perspective, from a biodiversity perspective, transport. We just absolutely, thrashed out, brainstormed an awful lot of stuff. And then we met again and sort of focused down on what we actually wanted to put in the mural. We identified local landmarks to make it totally Tiverton based. And when I show you the mural in a minute, you'll see what I mean, that people would absolutely know that it's Tiverton that we're talking about, and it's you, and it's on your doorstep. And, what are we going to do about this difficulty that we're in? What can we do to make a difference? We wanted to acknowledge that we're already doing some things really, really well. My daughter in particular, with the teenage voice, was determined to make it some of the things in there achievable and to celebrate rather than a scary message, because she felt like for the teenagers it was just important to have a slightly more positive outlook on it. And then we dreamed big, and we thought about, in an ideal world, what would Tiverton look like? What could we do? And so elements of our mural were dream big things as well. We identified the space. We were very lucky to actually secure quite a big space in Tiverton, right near the marketplace, very high footfall, and the council said yes. So that was amazing. Obtained permission from them, and we were good to go. So the University of Plymouth helped us to find a suitable artist. And we met with the artist and we thrashed through a whole load of different ideas and went backwards and forwards, and we settled on a design, put up the scaffolding and all the health and safety signs, and the council were brilliant at helping and supporting us, and then the mural came about. They spent the best part of a week doing it, and the scaffolding came down and it was brilliant, and we celebrated. So that's pretty much the process that we went through. But I do want to show you the mural that we created too, if that's okay, on the next slide, I think. Thank you, there it is. So we've got some Tiverton landmarks there. We've got the pannier market in Tiverton, and we've got the canal, and we've got some key municipal buildings that are in Tiverton highlighted there as well. The idea of this particular mural was that we wanted to create something colourful, aspirational, but the bottom, where you see the people on the bottom, we wanted to make sure that it reflected the diversity of people within Tiverton. So we have all age groups and all nationalities reflecting there. And those figures at the bottom are all doing good practice things that we see today, people are doing, but we want more and more people to do. So scooters and buying local produce and, cycling and all those amazing things that people can do, and they really do make a difference. But they're all dreaming big. So there's dream bubbles up above, which is what could it look like? And so we dreamt about the barges and on the canal taking produce to villages, rather than the villagers coming out to the town and using their own vehicles. We looked at the possibility of electric buses from our Tiverton Parkway train station to Tiverton. And we looked at what the pannier market might look like with fresh produce and clothes swaps and all sorts of amazing ideas. And we even looked about a good practice hub that we could invite people to come to, that would showcase amazing things that people can do really to make a difference. There are dream big things that we settled on, and it's not that we've achieved them, but it gets people talking, and people thinking, well, why not? How can we make this happen? So all of that was included in there. Colourful and hopeful, that was the main aim really, to stop people whilst they were passing through, just to think, wow, what's this all about? It caught their attention. You can hopefully see in the background, the grey section at the back is all the things that we don't want people to be doing as much of. So we put in there things that we'd like people to just think about before they do. So the cars and the pollution, we deliberately went for grey to sort of like show that that's the effect that it can have on our environment. We also wanted the ability to add more. So it's, in a way, not a complete mural. We can add things to the trees. We can add an extra dream bubble if we want to. We can, if more good practice things come our way, we can put them on there. So that was quite an exciting element, that it's there, but it's not finished. It's not a complete story. And then the other thing we did, which was my daughter's pushed it big time really, was she wanted to have QR codes attached to it, because she firmly believes that to engage with the youth you need to be using technology. So she had this dream of augmented reality on there as well, and she had a dream for QR codes to take people to good practice sites so that they could learn a bit more. So that was all encompassed in the mural. Next slide, please.
We've got 2 minutes, Steph.
Okay. So what was the impact in the Tiverton area? It was a real talking point, and people still talk about it now. And there's a suggestion of satellite murals popping up in other locations, and it's inspired an awful lot of stuff in local villages, not just Tiverton, in the schools and in the churches, and even an invitation obviously to speak here tonight, which I've put on there, which is an amazing opportunity, and also to speak at Exeter Cathedral. I've been invited to go there and talk about community engagement in a few weeks' time. So people are listening, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. And Sustainable Tiverton are planning to recruit a youth worker to spread the message as well. So it's built and built. And even though the tangible results might be hard to identify, there are amazing things that have come out of this particular project. Next slide, please. Right, so the good news is that even though when we did this, the resources and the help and the support wasn't it wasn't there, we were growing together, but the team at Plymouth University and Devon Climate Emergency have produced a resource so that they've learned from what we did and what other mural teams did, and they've created a book, and they've created a community mural toolkit. And it is brilliant. It's got everything in there that you might possibly need if you wanted to do your own mural. I put the link on there, but if you don't mind going on to the next slide, because it tells you some of the things that are in this toolkit. So it really walks you through every stage. What is net zero and what's a mural? Why do it? How to fund it? How to market your mural? But then it goes on to think about what's a suitable wall, what paint do you need, how do you get permission, how do you even go about doing a big mural like that, using projectors and all sorts of amazing information in this toolkit. And that's really what I wanted to leave you with today, this idea that if you're thinking of doing something like this, then the information's there. This team have put it together, and it's absolutely amazing resource for people, and available for you to use. So I would urge you to just have a look at it, and hopefully it will inspire you to do something similar. Next slide, please. Right, so this is my last slide. It was just if you are inspired to do it, I looked on your website and I thought, oh, what do you do? And I just thought the question to leave you with is, what might your message look like in the mural? What are your dream big? What are you already doing? What message would you like to leave people that walk past a mural that you've been involved in? Yeah, so that's our project, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to it and to what I've had to say, and yeah, a little snapshot of what we did and why we did it.
Thank you so much, Steph. Round of applause. Really great. And it just goes to show as well, when you focus in on something, I don't want to say simple, but when it's just one thing, when you're focusing on, developing a mural in the community, it can really sort of get that energy behind it, can't it? And get everyone involved in it. So yeah, just a really great example. And I know you said, it's hard to see, like the intangible bits, but I would imagine there's so many ripple effects that have happened from what you've been doing. You've already mentioned some of them, so very inspiring again. So thank you, Steph. If you've got questions for Steph, then keep hold of them until the Q&A session. Next we've got Will from the Monks Road, planting an art mural. So Will, you're up next.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a moment. Sorry about this. Won't take a moment. Is that working?
Yeah, you just need to put it on sort of the big screen slideshow. That's it.
There we go. Done.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Will. I'm here to talk about a project in an area of Mount Pleasant, an area called Mount Pleasant, which is an area of Exeter. It sounds like it's going to be really nice. Obviously, the name Mount Pleasant sounds really lovely, and it has a lot of potential, but areas of it are very, very run down. Is a very large transient population, a lot of student housing, and landlords who aren't sort of present in the area, and so it's ended up quite. I'll put my next slide on. To give a kind of example of, you know, how some of the streets are. There's a back alley there. I'm just going to leave that on for a moment while I talk about the project. But yeah, essentially, I thought that really what was needed was more greenery in the area to kind of improve mental health, really. For residents, and I met with our local community builder, lady called Ebby Peters, and she works with the community association, and they put on a lot of great sort of events and do a lot of work in the community. And we started discussing the way forward with it. We talked about getting trees put in on the street, and the council wouldn't do that because too many pipes and things in the way because it's a terraced street. So we started looking at other options, and essentially what we were left with was front gardens. So many of the front gardens are paved over. Landlords just don't want to spend money. They don't want to have to deal with greenery. And I think that just has this knock-on effect. It kind of just affects everybody because it's sort of it's almost like everybody loses interest when you're in a situation where there's just kind of no greenery at all. I think we just kind of lose interest and we assume it's not going to happen. So anyway, we decided that we were going to try to contact landlords, try to get more greenery in the area, try to get local population involved, and see whether we could make a change. And it was very difficult because we were up against trying to contact landlords who weren't around, trying to go through estate agents, letting agents who weren't interested. So we came up with this idea of creating some artworks in the local area that we thought would inspire people to look at their neighbourhood differently. And we looked at several, we looked at several different artists. We kind of gave it quite a lot of thought, and we found a wall, first of all, to where we could get permission. And this is a wall just behind a shop, and the shop owner was happy for us to use it. And we got this artist, Pete Stevenson, and he does this really great work where he kind of gets the local community involved, particularly children, and gets them to actually contribute to the finished piece of art. So you can see there in the picture on the right that the children are actually putting in some of the artwork there. So he's made it so that they can include a bee or they can include a butterfly or something like that, and kind of and that was really nice. And anyone who was walking past on that day could contribute to that, basically. So didn't have to be children, adults as well. So yeah, he does some really great work, and we were very pleased with that. And then we moved on to seeing what else we could do, and we got this guy Steve McCracken. You may have seen his work. He has got quite a lot of work around Devon, and he does permanent artworks, but he also does paste ups. So here's an example of a paste up that he does, and he has these seagulls. And the really great thing about these is that they're not permanent. So he can pretty much go around and put them anywhere, and it's not really a problem. They'll stay up for quite some time. And if you don't want them, if you don't want it, you can just scrape it off. So what we did was I got Steve involved, and we went around and we found, areas like this, a council, telephone connection box, and we pasted them on those. So we weren't putting them onto people's houses, as it were, without any permission. But it just meant that there was this kind of trail of artwork around the neighborhood that kind of just tied it together, made it feel a lot more welcoming. Just move on to the next one. This is so one of the residents wanted Steve to paint her gate. So he did this one on the gate as well. Again, he's bringing some nature into an area that's very sort of lacking in biodiversity. So yes, and with this, we've been trying to get student population involved in planting. So because we couldn't kind of get hold of landlords, we were working from the ground up, really. We did a lot of doorstepping. Emily from Wildlife Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust got involved with that. And we had this sort of overwhelmingly positive response from the student population. Basically everyone that we spoke to wanted plants. They wanted greenery. That they wanted to see that. And so we were able to get some money from the council. We're very lucky, obviously, being in Exeter, we've got Exeter City Council that we can get grants from for planting projects, community projects, artwork. We've also got the university, and the university provides funding for community projects, particularly if they think that it's going to help the student population better integrate with the local population. So we have been doing some planting in front gardens, mainly in pots, where we can, and trying to get as many students involved in doing that as we can. And it's all been a bit ad hoc, really. So we've not been able to kind of get everyone together and do a big event yet, but we've been sort of just doing bits and bobs where we can. Moving on to the next one. This was a huge billboard on the side of a shop. It's kind of the entrance to the neighborhood, really. And the billboard was empty. It just had bits of paper hanging off it, and it just looked absolutely awful. And again, the shop owner said we could use it. I think we were very lucky, really, that was the case. And we got a local artist again, Chloe Farrant, whose artwork is all a lot of it is based around nature. She does these really beautiful paintings of animals and birds and flowers. And we just wanted to create this sense of place, I suppose, to give the place some kind of identity, and for that identity to be sort of tied up with nature and the idea that it doesn't have to be grey and bleak, that there can be greenery, that there can be colour. And I think this does a really nice job. It's kind of the gateway to the neighbourhood, really. We were going to have, we did want to have text on it as well. We did want to have Mount Pleasant written on it, but the council wanted us to pay extra money if we did that, because I think it's considered to be advertising if it has text. So that's something to consider. So that's just moving on from that.
About a minute, Will.
About a minute left. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, if that's all right.
That's all right. Yeah. So this is some artwork that that I worked on with a graphic designer, Michael Hughes, and we kind of wanted posters and flyers that we could put out in the local community. Again, it's for the transient population, really, the student population, because they're here for such a short period of time that we need to kind of keep drawing attention to what we're doing. So we got these 3 posters made up, and we wanted to try and get the message out there. Obviously, contact details to get involved, and then we put very large posters on the side of the shop. Again, advertising boards for the shop not being used. We made use of them by printing these off and putting them in, and they look great, and they're really eye-catching. This is Ebby and another local resident. They're just doing some planting, knocking on doors, and just doing the planting stuff. Planting the pot there, and I think that's all. That seems to be my last slide. I can't seem to move on from there. So that's it, really. I don't know if I have omitted anything. I mean, I think that the outcome is that we already have a more beautiful neighbourhood, in the sense that we've got the artwork. It's really uplifting, but I hope that what it's going to do is encourage people to create a more biodiverse neighbourhood, because it's it's really in need of that. And I think it's going to improve everybody's mental health. It's going to improve the environment. So it's moving forward, it's my hope that we can kind of keep the momentum of this with each cohort of student population that comes in.
Great. Thank you so much, Will. And yeah, definitely just looking at the pictures there, it already feels like a brighter, more colourful place to live, like you say. And it's just the beginning. So very exciting to see where you go with it next. So thank you so much to all of our speakers tonight. I think it's been actually, one of the more inspirational webinars that we've had, actually. And so yeah, thank you to the speakers. I know that we're overrunning, but I would like to have a bit of time for your questions. But first, could we just quickly run the poll, Emma, at this point in time, because I just want to capture your answers before you all sort of dash off. So if you could run the poll, Emma, I'd appreciate it. It's just to get really your reaction as to how you feel now after seeing those presentations. So after all of that, do you now feel more able, inspired, or confident to use arts in your project? And please be honest. Just give it a moment. Just a few more. Great. So it looks like most of you now feel either a little or a lot more. We've got one that doesn't, and that's fine. But yeah, hope most of you feel a little more or a lot more able. After this session, we will be sharing obviously all the links that have come out of the talks. So hopefully you can go off and explore more. But now we'll just do some Q&As for sort of 9 minutes or so, because I know everyone will probably want to get on with. Oh, that's popped up again. Get on with your evening. So I think there was a question in the. Oh, actually, Karen's recommended to Will about Southwest in Bloom. They did a neighbourhood did a in your neighbourhood and then a village pennant competition, which was hilarious as we are so far from Chocolate Box Village, but we won a silver gilt. And she just put in, yay! She's put in an email address there. Katie's asked, what's Will's background? Does he live in Mount Pleasant?
Hi. Yes, I do live in Mount Pleasant. Yes. My background. We came here from Manchester about 4 years ago, and we came to be in Devon because it's so beautiful here, for jobs really. But I was amazed actually by how little trees there are here in this particular neighbourhood compared to where we were in Manchester, which is obviously a big city. Yes, that's it really.
Right. Are there any more questions for the speakers? Anyone want to take themselves off mute?
Yes, I can answer that one. Paul, I'm interested to know whether the speakers feel their projects have brought people together in their communities.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Yes, definitely for us. I mean, it's definitely brought people together. It's brought the student population together with the local population when doing planting and when doing the artworks.
Cool. Any of the other speakers want to answer that?
Yeah, I can add to that as well. Yeah, absolutely. That is one thing it really has done. As a result of the Net Zero Visions project, we held a creation hub in our local village, and so many people came to really talk about what could we do in the rural setting, and that has just really spiraled, and so many amazing projects have come as a result of that, and it has bonded our community in a way that few other projects have actually. It's right at the heart of what they want to do, and they love their environment and they want to learn more really. So absolutely.
It can be that real catalyst, can't it?
Yeah, and I'd like to say, as well as bonding local communities, it's helping us who live here make connections within the rest of the city and Plymouth. So that could be through people involved in net zero, that could be involved in like the local council or the university or the arts university or the bricks who are involved in flooding. So it's really helped.
Water.
Yeah, Southwest it's really helped us make links with other organizations as well, which I think is as important for communities as building relationships with each other, because that's where we can really find resilience. And just to quickly answer the arts question about artists, we did and continue to pay our artists. So we do look for funding. I think Will probably has a different way through that. But for us, it was important because artists tend to be scraping the barrel all the time and just be, oh, could you do this really cool thing that you do that's amazing, and then end up not making any money out of it for themselves. So then they have to go and work in like the local spa shop just to make ends meet really. Yeah, so for us, for artists, it's quite important, and we access funding. The National Lottery is a really good funder, and the Heritage Lottery Fund have also really helped us with funding.
Great, thank you. And I think just to add on to that, so the Wilder Communities team, we have a communities funding page, so funding that is appropriate for the community groups. We have that on our web pages, DWT web pages, and we'll be making sure that we're adding arts-based funding to the community pages from now on, because they tend to be quite sort of, nature focused ones, but we'll certainly be adding some more arts-based funding options on there. Another question has come through: do nature art projects need to be nature focused, or is just taking place in natural spaces an option? Well, I would say that, yeah, just taking place in a natural space, I think it is an option. You know, if you think of, say, I don't know, putting on a play or getting people to, you know, go foraging or something and making art out of that, you know, you need that natural backdrop and natural space to do that in. And I would say, you know, go to the green spaces where people are. I would imagine that a lot of the speakers would agree with that. So it doesn't have to be a far-flung, you know, nature reserve in the middle of nowhere. It can be your local park, as we've seen, you know, tonight, where, you know, that's on people's doorstep. People know it. People can get to it really easily. So I think that's really important as well. Anyone want to add to that question about, you know, does it need to be all sort of nature focused, or can it just be in a natural space?
I would say there's room for both, absolutely. You know, there's plenty of space in our world and an opportunity to do it both ways. Yeah, absolutely. I think either way would inspire people and reach their hearts, because art does that.
Yeah, and also depending on who you want to engage. So we had a silent disco in the local park, which is not at all nature connected, but it did connect with a bunch of young people on mopeds that would probably not have come if we were doing a foraging walk, for example. So we're like connection prostitutes, aren't we? We'll just go with anyone.
Celebrating the space, isn't
Yeah.
it? Celebrating the
Yeah.
space.
Absolutely. I've just noticed David's just put in that the mural toolkit has lots of possible sources of funding as well, so well worth downloading that and getting that. He's posted the link again. And someone's just asked about the recording. Yes, Paul, it's recorded, and then we put it on our YouTube channel, Devon Wildlife Trust YouTube channel. All of our previous webinars are on there as well. So yes, it will be shared. Do not worry about that. Are there any more questions from the floor? Give it a moment. No? Okie dokie. All right. Well, you know, I think I will wrap it up there, because we have overrun a bit. But, you know, yeah, just again to say thank you so much to the speakers. Really inspiring. You know, I think, you know, art can be that real catalyst, you know, for further projects, to connect with different people, for that ripple effect, you know, going forward. So it's a win-win. It's a win-win using arts in your community project. I really hope it's been inspiring for everyone here as well. Thanks again to all the speakers. There will be a feedback form as you leave. If you could fill out that feedback form, we'd really appreciate it, because it just allows us to keep on improving. So yeah, thank you for your input into that. And I was going to say about the next webinar as well, when the date is evading me, Emma, do you have it to hand? It's on community gardens.
It's the 20s, I think it's the 26th.
26th of March.
March. Yeah, on community gardening.
Great. 26th of March. It's on community gardens. So hopefully some of you will be coming along to that. Thank you ever so much for your time tonight. And yeah, have a good rest of the evening. Thanks so much.